Okay, we're learning the chapter 9 of the book of Kings 2, and we've been learning about the assassination of Yehu. Yehu assassinates Yehoram and Achaziah, and we'll soon see about more assassinations. But Yehu was given this job from Yoina Hanavi. Yoina was the Navi, the prophet, and Elisha didn't want to do this himself. He didn't feel it was appropriate, so he appointed Yoina Hanavi to carry out this. That he would appoint that Elisha appointed Yoina to appoint Yehu to carry out these assassinations. So Yehu is now the king of Israel. He's anointed the king, even though um, Jehoram is the son of Achav is really the king at this time. But while Jehoram is alive, Hashem arranged through the prophet that Yehu should be anointed, and so Yehu is seems an interesting guy. This Yehu, because on the one hand, he seems to be some type of a commander in the army, and that's why he is in Ramay Skilad, where the war is taking place. And and we also find out about Yehu that he is a somewhat of a meshugana in the way he drives. He has some type of a they're able to recognize who it is based on his driving record, and they say, "Oh, that must be Yehu." Yehu is this guy who drives like a maniac, and so anyway, Yehu is the one who's now appointed as king over the 10 tribes, and his job is given to him that your job is to get rid of the house of Achav. Achav was wicked king, him and his wife Izebel. Now, Achav was already killed already, so Achav is no longer here, but it's the house of Achav that's getting wiped out. And it turns out that the king of Yehuda is also going to be wiped out as well. And the reason for that is that the king of Yehuda was also an idol worshiper. The king of Judah, meaning the southern kingdom, and his name was Achaziah. He's also going to be assassinated. And the reason why is because, first of all, he's also the house of Achav. He is married to the daughter of Achav. He married Asalia, and so he's the house of Achav, and he's also the nephew of Achav. His Achav's wife, Achav's sister, excuse me, was his mother. Achav's sister. He's um, I don't know if we know the name, but she was the mother of. She was the wife of Yehoshaphat, and that's Achaziah's mother. And anyway, so this Achaziah is basically the house of Achav. So we're going to have two assassinations. Basically, both kings of the Jewish people are now going to be assassinated. Now, Yehu is given this job. He's given this job, this great honor, I guess, of being king. And he goes back to his fellow commanders and people he's hanging out with, and they want to know, what did that Meshugana tell you? Now, they called him a Meshugana. Who did they call a Meshugana? Here they're calling Yoina a Meshugana. And we spoke about last week why he's called Meshuga. we mentioned, it sounds a little surprising why he's what's the reason that they use that term. And this is where the term comes from, sugar. So where does it? So this is one of the places. Of course, it's in the Chumash as well. Vayisam sugar. But the concept is, and the commentaries mention this, that when there's a prophet is sometimes called the Meshuggah because he's not doing things the way other people do things. He's at least the commentaries mention over here. They bring Hamashuga Hazeh. The Radak says they would call a prophet Meshuggah because sometimes during the time of prophecy, they would do things like a Meshuggah, and they would go. It looked like they were going out of their mind. Um, in fact, there's one prophecy where it mentions someone like took their clothes off because they don't have the regular feelings of regular people, and they would call the prophet sometimes Meshuggah, in a in such a way, basically because they're not they're doing some crazy things. So the Metzudas David says it looks like them like he went crazy. And he adds this idea that because he's not involving himself in worldly matters. But in any event, uh, Yoina is called Meshugana, and they ask Yehu, what did this Meshugana, this prophet, tell? What did he have to say? What was he telling you? And Yehu didn't believe, or he wasn't sure if they're going to accept him as his new position of kingship. It's like, oh, I just became king. Oh yeah, really? Are they going to really believe that? Is that he didn't? He stayed quiet, tried to keep himself, keep things concealed and not reveal much. And but then they pressed him and pushed him, and believe it or not, they accepted it when he said, "Oh, this is what he told me." So um, they actually they said, okay, we're for you, and that was the story of them giving their clothing. um they gave their clothing to him, so to speak, implying like we're accepting you as king. And that was in verse 12. Each of them took his garment and put it underneath him on top of the steps. They sounded the shofar, said, Yehu has become king. So they took their garment off, lifted him up as if he's on some type of a pedestal, and gave him this honor, and encouraging him that um, you are our king. That they were accepting. Now, um, the continuation is that Yehu now has to make a plan. How is he going to assassinate Yehoram and Achaziah and all the other people that are from the house of Achav? And if you look back, this was in verse 5, that Yoina tells him, I have a message for you, commander. So verse 5, he says, Elecha Hasar, to you, the commander, I have a message for you. And in verse 6, he starts telling him this message, what his job is, that for oil, he says, Thus said Hashem, I have anointed you over the king, over Israel, and you should strike down the house of Achav, your master. And then I shall be avenged of the blood of my servants, and the entire house of Achav shall perish. I shall obliterate every male offspring. And here again, we have that surprising term in the prophets that we've seen a number of times, that they call men mashtin bakir, those that urinate on the wall. That's a term used for men. In other words, we got to destroy all the men of the house of Achav. And And the house of Achav should be like the house of Yeravam and Basha. And these were two kings that we were in the book of Malachim Aleph, that both were, their whole family was wiped out. And they weren't brought to burial. They were eaten by the dogs and the birds. So this is going to be the third time that we're seeing this. We had it with Yeravam ben Nevat. He was the first king of Israel. Then we had it with Basha, and now we're going to have it again with Achav. But Achav already was killed previously by Aram, but now it's his son Yehiram.
Why did they use that phrase of all those who urinated on the wall?
It's a sign of a man. It's just interesting that the prophet, it's mentioned numerous times when it talks about men. They call them mashtin bekir. Just a sign that any male is going to be wiped out. It sounds a little surprising that they would use that, but that's the term. We've seen it numerous times already. That's in chapter 9, verse 8, and we'll see it again. Anyway, so this is the job that Yehu has been given. So Yehu now where is he heading? Where is he going to find the king Yehiram, who's the main person he wants to kill? Yehiram ben Achav, the son of Achav. So where is he finding him? So Yehiram is not in Ramoth Gilead where the war is taking place. Yehiram is now convalescing in Yisrael. Now we know a place called Yisrael because we remember there was someone by the name of Navos who had a vineyard. Navos HaYisraeli. So Navos is from Yisrael, and he was the one who was one of the people Achav murdered. Of course, we know Achav and Izebel, they murdered all the prophets and killed many people. But one of the stories that's spelled out in the book of Kings is the story of how Achav killed Navos. And so anyway, so Yehiram, the king of Israel, is now in Israel, and believe it or not, Achaziah, who's the king of Judah, is also there visiting. And so Yehu is heading there to kill them. Now, the problem is there's a person who's on a watchman. There's a watchman checking things out, looking to see who's coming to protect the king. And they see this. They see this guy. They see someone approaching, and they say, they see Shifas Yehu, and which is the group of Yehu, the Gedud, the troops of Yehu. They see the troops of Yehu coming, and they say, I see a troops. I don't know who. So Yehiram, the king, says, okay, go quickly and go and travel to them. In other words, there's someone on the watchman is sending people to go find who's coming, who's approaching. And what happens is he tells he sends a person, and the term used is kach rakov. Rakov means a rider. Now, the commentary here mentions that it doesn't mean it's different than a roichev. There's a roichev and a rakov. At least this is the way the commentaries explain it. That first he sends someone who's like a secondary, not like a high level officer. The Rakov is not the rider. He's just a sort of like a second class, sort of like a apprentice, maybe not like the pro. And they send him, and he never returned. So the king is getting nervous, like, we want to know who's coming. So Yehoram says, send someone else. The watchman says, we sent this person and he didn't return. So they send the second, horseman, but they call him a roichev sus, roichev sus sheni. So this one is an actual rider. the commentaries say what happened was Yehoram, the king, was thinking, oh, maybe he's insulted that we didn't send someone of more dignified. We sent him this Rakov, so we'll send him a Retiree now. So at least that's one of the commentaries who mentions this the difference over here, and based on the Radak's interpretation, that he's only a masharis to the Retiree. He's only like a attendant to the rider. Anyway, so the bottom line is that both of these messengers never return. And the reason they don't return is Yehu tells them very roughly and sharply. He just says, what do you care if I'm coming in peace? Just get on board. Stay, go behind me and follow suit. We got it. We are, And now Yehu had some type of a prestige there, because you have to understand Yehu was a commander in the army, so he had some type of a stolz. He had some type of a stand. And anyway, bottom line was, so they're trying to figure out who's coming. In the meantime, the people they send are not coming back with any information. They're just staying. They seem to be hanging out with Yehu. So where in verse 20 it says the watchman reported saying he has reached them but has not returned. This is the second one. And the driving is like the driving of Yehu, the son of Nimshi, which really is the grandson of Nimshi, for he is driving his chariot recklessly. See this? So what we're seeing here, verse 20, is that he's a bishigoin yinhad, that Yehu had some reputation of driving like a meshuggah, bishigoin. He would drive he would drive very recklessly. Seems like he was not such a smooth driver, very rough and wild. Now, so they think it's Yehu, and they were right. We know that it is Yehu, but they are just guessing. They see from the way he's driving that it's obviously far away, and Yehoram is nervous. So in verse 21, Yehoram says, "Harness my chariot." Yehoram, the king of Achaziah, they both set out. Now Achaziah is the king of Judah, and he is visiting Yehoram, and they're both nervous at this point. In verse 21, they don't know, is Yehu coming back as a commander to give them news and information and high level intelligence, or is Yehu coming to rebel and create an assassination, to assassinate them and take over? What is Yehu coming for? So they're going on their chariot to be ready either to run away or to join him. At least they'll be ready. And each man, they're going out towards Yehu, and they encountered him at the portion of Navois HaYisraeli. Now, this is the end of verse 21. They encounter him at the portion of Navois HaYisraeli. So they're right there at this location where Navois HaYisraeli, some portion of his, they're right near it. And this brings us memory of the story of how Achav, the father of Yehoram, murdered Navois in cold blood. Navois was actually a relative, and he murdered Navois in cold blood, Achav, because he wanted his vineyard. And now we're up to verse 22, and this is where we left off last week. Before I continue verse 22, I should just mention that there is a discussion in the commentaries, where was Navois's property? Because in chapter 21 of Melachim Aleph of Kings 1, in chapter 21, there's the story of Navois. And in that story there's room to say that maybe the Navois's property was adjacent to the palace of Achav, which was in the Shomron. So there's reason to say that maybe in the Achav's palace was in the Shomron, and he wanted a vineyard near his palace, and it is close, for it is close by my house in its place. I will give you a better vineyard in its place, but I want it's near my and Novalis didn't want to give it to him, or even sell it to him because it was his ancestral land. So anyway, the bottom line is that the question is, so where is this? Achav had said that it's close by my house. So that makes it sound like Achav's palace was in the Shomron. It sounds like this was in the Shomron. Now here, in chapter 9 of Malachim Beis, it sounds like the property of Novis was in Yisrael. In fact, Novis's last name is the Yisraelite. So it sounds like maybe his property is in Israel. The commentaries struggle to, they grapple with this contradiction. And the answer they say, well, the two answers that are given. One is that where was Novis killed? So it could be that Novis was killed in Israel. So when it says the portion of Novis, it means this is where he was killed. It was it's the term here in verse 21. They encountered him at the portion of Novis HaYisraelite. That's where he was murdered in cold blood by Achav. But really the portion of his vineyard maybe was in the Shomron. The other way to answer this contradiction is that Achav also had a palace in Israel, and therefore this portion is next to the Yisrael palace of Achav. So then it fits, because even though the main palace maybe was in the Shomron, but there's also another palace that's in Israel, and this property, the vineyard, was next to the palace that's in Israel. Yes, David.
I just asked Copilot, the artificial intelligence, about this expression of about all those who urinated on the wall.
Yeah.
So they said it refers to, the phrase appears several times in Kings 1, Kings 2, as well as right. Samuel 1.
Samuel, yeah.
Yeah, it's based on the fact that men, unlike women, can urinate while standing. It says the expression is generally used in the context of judgment or eradication, often implying a total destruction of all male descendants.
Right.
It's a way to emphasize the complete elimination of male lineage. By using such a graphic phrase, the text underscores the thoroughness of the divine judgment being pronounced.
Right. Yeah, I'd be a little careful to rely on artificial intelligence when it comes to Tanakh, because they might take stuff from like Christian sources, and we don't like to, get any information from anything that's not holy and pure and correct. So I'd sort of like stay a little away. If you're looking for scientific stuff, maybe, is one thing. But if you're looking for, discussion about Tanakh, there's too much Goyish stuff that's corrupted and not authentic. So I would, just be a little careful and wary about that.
A lot of times when I ask them according to the Torah, or according to Judaism, it excludes automatically any non-Jewish source.
I'm just saying, like, be careful. That's all. I'm not. In any event, thank you for looking it up. What was that?
Saying, what it's saying, does that coincide with what we're saying as far as the
pretty much. I mean, it seems correct. I just don't like to bring such impurity into if it's coming from a source, if they're getting that information from from a non-Jewish source, you don't want to sort of bring anything impure into our minds. Okay, so bottom line is that that here we have the portion of Navos Hayisraeli right here, and that's where Yehoram and Achaziah meet up with Yehu. Yehu is the new king. Yehoram is the king who's about to be assassinated. Now, when you verse 22, chapter 9, again, we're in Kings 2, chapter 9, verse 22. When Yehoram saw Yehu, he said, "Do you come in peace, Yehu?" And he replied, "What is the peace that it should extend to the harlotries of your mother Izebel and to her attendant abundant witchcraft?" So he answered back in a very sharp way. Like in the Hebrew, it sounds a little better than the English, I think, because it just flows a little smoother. Ma hashol, what type of peace are you talking about with a mother Izeva like your mother, full of harlotry and and witchcraft? Yeah, what type of peace? What type of peace can you even mention? What you know? And Yehoram then turned the reins in his hands and fled and said to Achaziah, "It is a trick, Achaziah," which means we got to get out of here. So you got Achaziah and Yehoram trying to run away. They just had a little one sentence conversation with Yehu, and they're ready to run because they realize, or at least Yehoram realizes that Yehu is blowing up about the sinfulness of Izebel, Yehoram's mother, and he's saying, "What type of peace?" Meaning, there's no such thing as peace. So Yehoram, so Yehoram is running away. 24. Yehu drew his bow fully and hit Yehoram between his shoulder blades. The arrow protruded from his heart, and he collapsed in his chariot. Now, one of the things that I don't know if we really connected before, maybe we did a while back, but who was this Yehoram? He does have a little history. We do know a little about him. And Yehoram was the individual who had lent money to Ovadia on interest. Ovadia was protecting 100 prophets, 50 in each cave, 2 caves. He was protecting them and supplying them with food. And he was originally a wealthy man, and he ran out of money. And he was working for Achav, the king, worked in the palace. Achav and Izebel were killing prophets, and he was risking his life, and he saved these 100 prophets. And he ended up running out of money. And he borrowed money from Yehoram, and ultimately he didn't have much to pay. He didn't have anything to pay back, and he ended up getting sick and passed away. And Yehoram went pressuring the wife to pay up the loan with the interest. And he told the wife, "If you don't give me the money and the interest, I am going to take your sons as slaves." And the wife of Ovadia went crying to her husband's grave and asking, her husband to pull some strings in heaven and asking Hashem to help her. And ultimately, that was the story of the oil, and they had enough oil, and they paid back this Yehoram. So this is Yehoram. Now, Yehoram was so evil that to take interest for the loan and was going to enslave the orphans. In other words, he strengthened his heart to greedily to take interest from this poor lady, to take money, not to offer any money, but instead to lend the money, and then to want to take these orphans as slaves, the two sons as slaves, these orphans. And so ultimately, his measure for measure punishment was that the arrow pierced him in his heart. And that is the punishment for hardening his heart and and ultimately he was killed that way. Now, Yehu, in verse 25, Yehu then said to Bidkar, his captain. So it's in the Hebrew is he told Bidkar I think it's Shalishai, Bidkar, his captain, and he said, "Go pick him up and throw him into the portion of the field belonging to Navais the Israelite." So now throw him there into that portion, either the place where Navais was murdered or the place of Navais's vineyard, according to the two interpretations we just mentioned a few minutes ago. And for remember that I and you were riding together behind his father Achav when the prophet of Hashem proclaimed this prophecy about him. And this is about Eliyahu's prophecy that Achav's family is going to be destroyed and so on. Now, what Yehu is telling Bidkar is, don't feel bad about what we're doing, because this is the fulfillment of Eliyahu Hanavi's prophecy. We're just fulfilling it. We are not doing anything wrong by killing, by throwing his body here and killing him and throwing his body here. Don't be surprised that we're acting cruelly and disrespectfully. This is we both heard this, and the Hebrew says ani v'ata zachar. Remember that I and you es reichvim tzimodim. We were riding jointly or together, and they were either in the same chariot or they were next to each other, and two chariots right next to each other, and they were there when Achav murdered Navis, and they heard what Eliyahu Hanavi had said about the prophecy that what's going to happen to the house of Achav. So I and you were riding together behind his father Achav when the prophet of Hashem proclaimed this prophecy about him. In verse 26, did I not see the blood of Navais and the blood of his descendants last night? And the word of Hashem, I shall therefore bring retribution upon you in this very portion. The word of Hashem. So now pick him up and throw him into the portion according to the word of Hashem. So basically, this is in punishment for the blood of Navais and the blood of Navais's descendants. And here is a topic. Does someone have a question here? No, this is a topic of discussion in the Gemara, because we don't know about Achav murdering Navais's descendants. We do know of Nachav of Achav murdering Navais, but we don't know about him murdering the descendants of Navais. Where does the Demei Banav, the blood of his descendants, come from? According to one opinion, he actually did kill the children, and the reason why he did that was Achav didn't want anyone to be a surviving heir, so he basically killed all of the children that were basically his cousin. His cousin was Navais, and these were his second cousin, or once removed cousin, whatever. They were his relatives that he killed out. But there is another interpretation, according to the sages in the Gemara, that they say that when person kills someone, Navais was the only one killed, but he was considered responsible because the future children that could have been born were not. And so Navais, you didn't kill his kids, but you did. Achav killed his future potential kids, and that's called killing his kids. And so his body is just left there, and he's thrown there. In verse 27, Achaziah, king of Yehuda, saw, and he fled by way of the garden house. Yehu chased after him. So he's going to this Beis Hagan, and through the Beis Hagan, I guess, through that way. And Yehu chased after him, and said, "Strike him down also in the chariot." And um, and it says B'male Gor Asheras Yivlam, in the ascent of Gor. Basically they wounded him there in this ascent of Gor, which is by Yivlam, it's a place. And by Yonas Megiddo, and he fled to Megiddo and he died there. So in other words, they wounded him in this initial location, and then he died in Megiddo. Now, the problem over here that the commentaries mention is Rashi brings it down that the Divrei Yomim, it sounds like he died in Shomron. Um, and Rashi brings down in Divrei Hayamim in chapter 22 over there of the Second Chronicles 2. So it mentions over there they seeked out Achazyahu and they captured him, and he was hiding in Shomron. They brought him to Yehu, and anyway, so there's a contradiction of exactly where he was killed, but ultimately there are different interpretations of how they where exactly he was. But the Rashi brings it in. The reason I'm mentioning this, even though I don't need to mention all those little details necessarily of maybe not so important to figure out exactly where he was killed. But the thing is that the Rashi brings a very surprising midrashic story of that from the Gemara that basically this Achazio, you think he's the son of Yehoshaphat, very holy father, and from he actually was involved in cutting out Hashem's name from Sefer Torah and switching it with Avodah Zarah names of Avodah Zarah instead, and so the understanding is that when it says in Shomron he was hiding there, it means he was doing this sin in Shomron, and because of that he deserved this type of death. No, so it's sort of like explaining the reason why. So that was the Torah, the Navi, and the Ksuvim and Divrei Hayamim. The statement there is not literally that he died there. It was more that this explains what was the reason and the cause of his death, the reason for the punishment, and was that he was quite a idol worshiper to go to that extent, and he would never have done it in Yerushalayim but in Shomron in a hidden place he was doing this, and ultimately he was killed, and that's the story over here. Anyway, that's the way Rashi understands it. There is the Radak over here has another interpretation of that he was wounded in Yivlaim and he ran to Megiddo and he became comatose in Megiddo, and then he didn't really die there, even though our pasuk says he died there, but really they took him to Shomron, and it was there that he actually died. But he was he was in the maybe like a goises already here, so it could say that he died in over here. Anyway, bottom line is he died, and our pasuk says he died in Megiddo. He ran to Megiddo and he died. And verse 28, his servants brought him by chariot to Jerusalem and buried him in his grave with his forefathers in the city of David. So he actually merited to be buried in the city of David. Now, the fact that he got a burial, I guess you could say, was an honor for him. But the issue was, did he get buried with the kings? And if I remember correctly, when I was preparing this, I think that he did not merit that. He ended up getting buried in the city of David, but not with the other kings, not in an honorable burial. Let me just see if I see a commentary mentioning this. Um, I'll have to look it up again. But anyway, that is the story with Achaziah. This is the king of Judah. He was struck and he was buried in the city of David. Now, on verse 29, it mentions again that in the 11th year of Jehoram, the son of Achav, Achaziah reigned over Yehuda. In the 11th year, that was when Achaziah became king. And basically, what it's emphasizing that he only lasted 1 year. So you know, he took over his father Yehoshaphat, and I'm sorry, he took over his father Yehoram, the Yehoram of Judah, and he lasted a year. Now, now, um, we are in verse 30. Yehu came to Israel. Yehu then came to Israel. Israel heard, Yehu, I'm sorry. Yehu then came to Israel, and Izebel heard, and she put mascara on her eyes and adorned her head, and she looked out of the window. And this is an interesting, surprising thing that she did. So this is Izebel. This is the wife of Achav, the source of all the problem that we're now taking, avenging, that we're now taking retribution for. It all boils down to Izebel, who really was a major influencer to her husband Achav to sin the way he did. And she was also very influential, not only in getting Achav, but she actually was influential in a lot of idol worship of the whole Jewish community. And she was also a murderer herself. She was the one who caused the murder more directly, even. And so Izebel was put mascara on her eyes and adorned her head, and she looked out of the window. Now, Rashi says that she thought that she will find favor in Yehu's eyes and he will marry her. It's a little interesting why she's doing this. According to Metzudas David, she's just hoping that maybe she'll look nice and he won't murder her. But Rashi in the Radak also seems to say that. Rashi seems to understand that to marry her. Now, Yehu was coming through the gate, and she said, "Is all well, Zimri, murderer of his master?" Now, what does she mean by that? She's calling him Zimri, the murderer of the master. So we have to remember where we had the story of Zimri, and it's not referring to Zimri in the Chumash, it's referring to Zimri that we had here in the book of Kings. Zimri was the one who killed Elah, the son of Basha, killed out that whole family. And it's in Kings 1:16, where you have um, Zimri assassinating the house of Basha. And Zimri annihilated the entire house of Basha. This was in chapter 16, verse 12, in accordance with the word of Hashem, which he had spoken concerning Basha. through the hand of the prophet Yehu. So here you see, and again, you have names repeating themselves here in the Tanakh. There's a Yehu who's a prophet who had said that Baasha's household is going to get wiped out, and Zimri is the one who annihilated the entire house of Baasha. Who was the king at the time? It was the son of Baasha, Elah, and um, Elah ben Baasha was the king of Yisrael, king of Israel, the king of Israel, the northern kingdom, and Zimri was the servant, and he saw that Elah was drunk and right, it was shikor, and he basically killed him out and assassinated. Zimri lasted 1 week, and after a week, that was the end of Zimri. Discussion if he somehow he died in a fire. The question is if he lit the fire and he committed suicide, or if Omri lit the fire. But bottom line is that he died. He lasted for 1 week. Tivni and Omri. Anyway, that was that's the story over there, which we had learned about a while back. So here she's using this term about Zimri. Are you Zimri, the one who murdered the murder of his master? In other words, you're not doing anything new. We had a Zimri before who killed his master. He killed Elah. And so you know, so she's calling him Zimri. Now, the Metzudas David says, so she was saying this to flatter him, which is interesting. You know, like maybe it's not so bad what you did. So, in other words, I don't know if I would have initially learned it that way, but that's the it seems like that's what the way they're. Well, I guess it makes sense that you have to learn it that way because why was she making herself beautifying herself, and then she said that said, oh, you know, you're not so bad. You're like Zimri who you know who did this previously. You know, you're following in good footsteps, you know, so to speak. Even though you know we're dealing with someone who just killed her her son. And this is he just killed Yehoram. But nevertheless, it looked like you know, she's trying to win him over. So she gives him this concept of, oh, you know, you're just like Zimri that killed his master. You know, you're following our tradition. You fit right into the family. Now, verse 32 is he raised his face out toward the window and said, who's with me? Who? And two or three officials looked out to him. He said, push her out of the window. They pushed her out. Some of her blood flowed to the wall and to the horses, and Yehu trampled her body. And that's verse 33. Now, verse 34, he then came in and ate and drank. He came inside and ate and drank. And if you remember, when Achav was killed, um, in chapter 22 of Kings 1. So over there, it says, chapter 22, that Achav is killed. The dogs licked up the king's blood and the harlots bathed in it. Right, that was that story over there. And in verse 36 over there in chapter 22, it says, the call went out in the camp as the sun was setting, saying every man back to his city and his land. And the understanding was that if you look at the Hebrew, so Vayavor Harina, it's not just a call. It uses the word Rina, which means the song. And it's the Gemara says that referred to the fact that they rejoiced when he was killed, when Achav was killed. So here also now is Achav's son is killed, and the whole they ate and drank like Yehu is trying to fulfill the obligation. He assassinated him, and now he's eating and drinking to fulfill the verse that when the wicked perish, you rejoice. It's a rejoice for the world. So he came in and ate and drank, and then he said, "Attend to this cursed woman and bury her, for she is the daughter of a king." And um, he wants to bury this Izebel, this lady who the wicked queen, but he feels like it's appropriate um, to bury to bury her, and um, it felt like it's appropriate to bury someone, and it is a little surprising. So the Radak says that even though she was from the kingdom of the Goyim, she wasn't from a Jewish family. She was originally from the nations of the world. Nevertheless, um, it's ethical to show a little respect. Um, Not because her husband was a king, because he caused the whole the destruction of the kingdom. So that there's no reason to bury her. But because she comes from a family of kings, that's why she deserves maybe to be buried. That's what he thought. Well, so they went to bury her in verse 35, and guess what they saw? But they did not find anything left of her except the skull, the feet, and the palms of the hands. And this is also a very midah keneged midah, measure for measure, as her body was eaten up by the dogs. There was nothing left of her body. Um, but but nevertheless, there was her hands and her feet were left. And our rabbis tell us because she was very big in one mitzvah. Now, she had a certain, as bad as she was, people have certain things that they do that sort of like a redeeming feature that I mean, didn't redeem her really, but something positive, and that is that she used to give money and rejoice with people who were celebrating simchas, achnasas kala, and she also would visit people who were mourning death. And so because of that, her hands and her feet, which involved the dancing and the walking, going to people to attend funerals, and because of that, in her head, it deserved respect, and therefore the dogs did not eat that. So that was like measure for measure that she merited to have, even though she deserved all this terrible, the terrible destruction, but nevertheless Hashem repaid her, so to speak, in some way for the mitzvahs that she did do and she was very involved in. Now, so that's what they found. And there's a discussion in the commentaries if really that even that part was buried. Uh, in other words, did they actually then go and bury that, or was it? But did they just leave it? But the point is, it wasn't eaten up, it wasn't devoured by the dogs. Now, 36, they returned and told him, and he said, "It is the word of Hashem. This is exactly what Hashem had said." That he spoke through the hands of his servant Eliyahu Tishbi, saying, "In the portion of Yisrael, the dogs will devour the flesh of Izevel." And so this is exactly as the prophet Eliyahu said, "And Izevel's carcass shall be like fertilizer spread over the face of the earth in the portion of Yisrael." And seemingly that's why it says Yehu trampled her body. and because he wanted to fulfill, I guess, this, that it should be like fertilizer spread over the face of the earth in the portion of Israel, so they will not be able to say that this is Izevel. So no one will ever be able to say that that this is Izevel.